This is Mrs. Duncan, your Humanities 101 online instructor, and we're in the unit that has the chapter on literature, and we're going to focus in on some of the terms that are used for poetry and use some examples to help you kind of understand them a little bit better. We're going to start with diction and look at denotation in this really brief little poem that starts with rough wind, and words like wind and cloud and night are just said when considered alone indicate their dictionary definition. And remember, that's what we mean by denotation. It's just wind is wind, clouds are clouds, night is nighttime. And so even though it may add some additional information like a sullen cloud, we know it's referring to an actual cloud, an accumulation of moisture in the Earth's atmosphere. Read by itself doesn't have much, it says emotional response, but it's the combination when it's a wild wind and a sullen cloud, and it gives it kind of some other qualities that give it more meaning. Let's take a look at connotation. All right, same poem, but when you take words like rough and moan and sullen, they suggest pain, loss, and sorrow, and they add a dimension to those other words that you wouldn't get emotionally. They're there to serve the purpose to convey the despairing theme, wail, cry, yell for all that's wrong in the world. And of course, we've all had most times when the injustice in our world just calls out for protest in our hearts and minds, and this is calling out for it in nature. So it's wild, not in just the literal way, but and hums, but just to evoke an emotional experience. They have negative feelings associated with them. Things that are rough are not comfortable. When you moan, it's usually out of grief or sorrow. When you're sullen and you're sad, it's not just the technical definition. You combine these all and you have a negative association. Connotation could have a positive association, but these are all negative. All right, I think we're going to skip syntax. Let's go to imagery. Imagery is a real important feature of poetry. It's used in other types of literature as well, but it's compacted and emphasized in poetry. Let's see, the one I want to look at is a beautiful poem here by another romantic poet, George Gordon Lord Byron, often just called Byron. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes. Thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies, one shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress. Now let's talk about a raven tress. You might have to look up the word tress, but it's a word that used to be used for hair and how when it's curled and long curls. And raven here would not literally mean a bird. It would be a reference to a color. So there's a visual image right there. And it talks about how beautiful she is, and it uses the images of darkness and brightness, a starry skylit night, and it says all its best of dark and bright. So we get a little bit of that picture, and that's what imagery does. Let's see, another favorite here. Ah, yes, the tiger. This is a pair poem with The Lamb by William Blake. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? Now, when you stop and think of symmetry and you picture a tiger, it's because they have symmetrical stripes, right, on each side of their body. And you've got what the shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart. And so some of it is the visual imagery of what the tiger looks like, but the power of it and the tension in it is it's, an animal of prey and great power. And then it uses some imagery here. What the hammer? What the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil? What dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? And so it's got some visual images to kind of create this idea of a blacksmith kind of creating this tiger in a furnace. That's another kind of use of imagery there. Let's look at sounds. Sounds you can't really be recognized unless you hear them out loud. And onomatopoeia is a term for when the poet makes the words sound like it would actually sound. So like in this one, um, it starts off, the ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around. Then here comes the onomatopoeia. It cracked and growled and roared and howled like voices in a swound. And it's got those words cracked. It sounds like when it cracks. That's onomatopoeia. Another even more common sound device poets use is called alliteration, and it's when the actual vowel sounds are repeated. Alliteration is the repetition of a consonant sound. Hopefully you remember from elementary school the difference between a vowel, which is that a, e, I, O, U sounds, and the consonants like B and C and D and F and T. Okay, when this one it's S for a while, and you'll hear it here. When to the sessions of sweet silent thought I summon up remembrance of things past, I sigh the lack of many a thing I sought, and with old woes, and we get a bunch of W's, with old woes, new wail my dear time's waste. So in that line you have mostly W's, but you hear the S sound throughout there, and that just creates this sort of feeling and emphasis, and it's just part of the quality of it. Assonance is the vowel. This could be a little bit harder to perceive. Margaret, are you grieving over golden grove unleaving? And you hear that in the end rhyme, leaves like the things of man you with your fresh thoughts care for. Can you? Ah, as the heart grows older, it will come to such sights colder. By and by, nor spare a sigh, hear the eyes there pretty easily. The worlds of one would leaf meal lie, and yet you will weep and know why. Now no matter, child, the name, sorrow's springs are the same. Most of the assonance here is in the end rhyme, the A sound, the E, grieving, leaving. You just got a little bit in the line, by and sigh. But that's the kind of sound there, and it should be elongated a little bit. Consonants is similar to alliteration. It's very different. Or rather, I should say it's a little harder to separate, but it says it's the repetition of a consonant, but it's at the more on the end rather than the beginning. Let's see if we can get it here. The consonant N in the words wind, see how it's in the middle, wind and winter. I mean, yes, the W's, but we're talking about the N's here, and the I in there. Okay, that would be the consonants. A wind, if winter comes, then can spring be far behind? And you see that here, the N all the way through. Winter comes, can spring be far behind. So consonants is when the consonant is repeated inside the word. Alliteration is at the usually that we're really focusing on the beginning of the word. Session, sweet, silent, summon, sigh, sought at the beginning of the word, and that's the difference there. Well, there are other features as well. You know that poems, not all of them, they don't have specific exact rhyme all the time, and that's not the only kind of rhyme. I just want to make sure you see that. We're used to expecting exact rhyme. City, pity, he, agree, pretty. Okay, that's exact rhyme, but that's not the only kind. You can have what's called near, love and prove, it's real close. Field and yield is exact, but love and prove are close. The vowels are just off a little bit. The V sound is the same, but that still counts as a type of rhyme. End rhyme is the on the end. Hands, lands, stands, crawls, walls, falls. We're used to that. We skip internal and go to I rhyme. I rhyme is when it looks to your eye like it would, but it doesn't when you say it out loud. Root and foot. See, good example. You look at it and you go, yeah, that rhymes. Root and foot. Not exactly. Find, mind, and wind. Find, it's not wind. And find what wind serves to advance an honest mind. From John Donne. So those are some end rhymes that are not, they look exact, but they're I rhymes because they look to your eye like they would rhyme, and when you read them out loud you realize they didn't, but that counts too. Different poems have different rhythms. That's something for your English literature class, because that takes a little more time to kind of work your way through. But that gives you a good idea. Hopefully that helps you with some of the terms that are in our textbook that go with literature and poetry, and you will get a little more on character, plot, setting, point of view, and style when you go to English 102. But study those up, look at the examples. There's a lot more terms for this one, and make sure you look, you can tell what the definition is and get an example of it.